For 2 years, Europe has been engulfed by the flames of war. Only the Soviet Union and Great Britain continue to hold out against the Germans and their Axis partners. The US government has decided to lend support in the form of armaments and other supplies only. This assistance is first offered to the UK and then also to the USSR. But intense isolationist opinions in America have prevented the United States from becoming more directly involved in Europe's war. On December 7, 1941, everything changes. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the US Navy's main base in the Pacific, officially brings America into the war. The world's sleeping giant has been awakened. Against the background of the British North African campaign and the defeat of the Germans' armies near Moscow, the balance of power threatens to shift significantly. The Soviets and British now have reason to hope for an eventual victory in the struggle. But victory is still a long way off. The Japanese attack on the United States forces an American retreat in the Philippines, extending the reach of the Empire of the Rising Sun. Having seized dominance in the Pacific as a result of their successful assault on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese have begun operations in a number of regions in the Pacific. The Allied forces in the South Sea are routed. Singapore falls. The US troops in the Philippines lay down their arms after a tough fight on Corregidor, and the remains of British forces withdraw from Burma to India. The outlook in the Pacific is definitely not encouraging for the Allies. But the colossal US military might is already beginning to shift into high gear. The US forces in the Pacific are growing and slowly gain the upper hand, one island and one battle at a time. Parrying the Japanese strikes in the Coral Sea and near the Midway Islands, the Allies now make their first serious counterstrike in the Pacific. A US force storms ashore at Guadalcanal. The battles fought at the Solomon Islands in North Africa, as well as at Stalingrad and Kursk, have resulted in a radical turn in the war's course. Relying upon considerable industrial superiority, the Allies assumed the offensive in all areas of operations. Troops of the Allied nations clear Africa of the Germans and Italians, and knock Italy out of the war entirely. Meanwhile, the Allies also press the enemy throughout the vast Eastern Front, and solidify their hold on key positions in the center of the Pacific. Time has come for determined and shattering assaults along all fronts, and come they do. A grandiose landing operation in Normandy, amphibious counterstrikes in the Philippines, and the elimination of the German center group in Russia. The Allies are rapidly reclaiming the territory they had lost in the early years of the war. In 1944, the U.S. military continues to make significant progress in 2 theaters of war. In the Pacific, they recapture the Philippines and raise the victory flag over Iwo Jima. In Europe, following the success of Operation Overlord, the liberation of France is well on its way. Germany can no longer sustain a war on 2 fronts. The Soviet forces have smashed Germany's Army Group Center, while the Americans successfully put an end to the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's final ill-fated offensive in the Ardennes. The war now rages on Germany's own territory. After the liberation of Poland, the Soviet juggernaut now threatens the outskirts of Berlin, preparing to deal a final, decisive blow from the east. Matching this effort, the U.S. Army approaches the Ruhr, once the heart of Germany's impressive industrial capabilities. Here, finally, exists a chance to put to rest the last remnants of German resistance on the Western Front. Having made a forced crossing of the Rhine River, U.S., British, and Canadian troops seize Germany's industrial heart, the Ruhr region. Nothing more can stop their eastward advance. Meanwhile, Soviet armies launch a massed assault on Berlin, capturing the German capital. The once solid German front is no more. A historical meeting between the U.S. and Soviet troops occurs at the Elbe River. The Germans' unconditional surrender is signed at Reims, France on May 7, 1945, forever commemorated thereafter as Victory in Europe Day. One key objective of this long and bloody world war is finally achieved. The Allies' joint actions have brought the war in Europe to a victorious conclusion, For many long years, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union fought jointly against the Axis. Now their enemies in Europe are finally defeated.